Welcome to another edition of the Health and Wellness Show. My name is Dave Greer. This evening we're going to talk about a miraculous machine that we have been using in our clinic for over 10 years to help diagnose some of the people that come in for massages. We can tell exactly where the person's locking up and where their problems are just by using the simple machine and by turning around and observing the individual. My own personal story with the machine is years ago I had a problem with an infection in my leg, and I went to a number of doctors and different clinics, and the wound would not heal. In fact, it got to the point where it started festering and started turning into gangrene, and I was taking some very, very powerful antibiotics. Well, along came a friend of ours that introduced us to this machine, and he said, why don't you have Dave try it, And I was looking at, doctors wanting to amputate my leg, and I wasn't too fond about that. In fact, I decided I wasn't going to do it because I've watched some of my other friends start off with an amputation of a toe, then a foot, then half of a leg, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, the rest of the leg was gone, and a year later they were also gone. And it was a miserable way to watch a person die. So I kind of decided to opt out on that. But anyhow, getting back to the wave machine, is that I got onto the wave machine a little bit reluctant because I already kind of decided that this was the end of the road for me, which was bad thinking on my part anyhow. But to go on with the story is that I started using the wave machine, and within about a week, all of a sudden I found my right leg, it started to itch, and that might not mean something to a lot of people, but people that are diabetics or have lost the feeling in their legs for one reason or another for bad circulation, is that all of a sudden it kind of lit up a little light bulb in the head. Then I turned around and decided to unwrap my leg to take a little look at what was going on there. And to my surprise, that the wound was all healed over and scabbed. And then I started thinking, is that every time I got off of this machine, I got a little bit of buzz. And so there was a little bit of, had to be circulation problem here. I could take all the antibiotics I wanted in the world, but the thing is that if they weren't getting to the leg through the circulation of the blood, they absolutely weren't doing any good. So to make a long story short is that this little machine saved my leg. Actually, it probably saved my life because I had no other alternative but to turn around and start with amputation. Also, another thing that I've learned too about this is that I used to have neuropathy in my legs, and I don't have that problem anymore. I also have great feeling. In fact, I just went to the doctor. They wanted to have me do a checkup, and they've been after me for a long time, so I went over there and they stuck some needles in my foot, and I had to tell them when it was hurting and when they were touching me with the needle and that, and I was fine. I had full control of my nerves in my feet. I could feel everything. And before I was using the wave machine, I couldn't feel a thing. I could step on a nail and not feel it at all because there was no circulation. There was nothing going on in that leg. I also had a little bit of problem with neuropathy in the stomach. That went away. I mean, I get on the Chi machine as much as I possibly can. But one thing I did learn too is that when you get on the Chi machine right away and do too much and you haven't been moving around too much, you got to take it little steps at a time. Otherwise, you get a little sick and a little nauseous. And I also figured that out also, and also did some reading on this, is that all of a sudden my lymph system, the only way that your lymph system works is by movement. And of course, when you're having problems with your legs and you're having different problems of moving around, all of a sudden, you don't move around that much. And this machine, with just 5 minutes on this machine, believe it or not, it's the same as doing a half-hour worth of aerobic exercise as far as blood circulation is concerned. That's how miraculous this thing works. This whole machine was invented by a gentleman over in China, and what he did is that it was part of taking the legs and massaging them and rolling them in a fish-like motion and turning around and keeping up the same beat that your heart does normally without exertion. So, because he watched these fish for years, and actually he turned around and saved a little girl's life that was in the airport that turned around and hit her head, or something happened to her. I can't imagine exactly what it was, but they turned around and looked at her and they pronounced her as being dead. And he turned around and grabbed her ankles and started doing this motion, the same motion as the wave machine. Of course, he didn't have the wave machine at the time, but he did this for over 15 to 20 minutes, and all of a sudden this little girl came back to life. So you have to turn around and seriously take a look at some of the science that's behind this. This wave machine is also used by the Australian Army. They use this to turn around and help people get circulation back into their legs and that. And it's a very miraculous machine. We've used it here in the clinic for over 10 years. And like I say, is that our practitioners turn around and use it as a diagnostic machine, because they can turn around and see exactly where the body is locking up. And people are amazed when they say, okay, you've been having a little bit of trouble with your shoulder, it looks like your lower back is a little bit stiff. All of a sudden these things come to light and they say, well, how did you know that? Well, we just looked at the movement in your body. It's like the picture that you're seeing right now is that some people, to start off with, we just use one leg at a time. And then we turn around and use two legs at a time for just a few minutes. And if you have any knee problems in that, we make sure that you have a cushion underneath your knees so you don't put any extra strain on your knees. Okay? The same thing if you have neck problems, is that we turn around and you put a little cushion underneath your neck to stabilize your neck, because the thing is, if you have any problems with disc in that there in the neck, you don't want to be twisting around like that. But it also turns around and does a little bit of a motion